This is Platemark. My name is Ann Schaefer, and I am your host. I'm an independent curator focusing on prints and print making. You have found us here at Series 3 of Platemark, in which I interview the fabulous and wonderful people of the print ecosystem. Today's guest is Jennifer Mack-Watkins, a fabulous artist who you all should know and probably do already. I wanted to talk to her for a couple reasons. One, she has some work up at the Metropolitan Museum of Art as we speak. How many artists do you know are on the walls at the Metropolitan? I was like, holy cow, let's talk. And also she has illustrated a children's book that just got published, and I think you all need to know about that too. It's fascinating to talk to her about that process. All right. My positionality, I identify as a cishet white woman, and I use the pronouns she, her. I record Platemark in Baltimore, Maryland, the land of the Piscataway Conoy people. Any images Jennifer and I talk about will be over on the show notes for you at platemarkpodcast.com. Over there, you'll also find a support and donate button where you can support the good work of us, we people at Platemark. It's just me and my guests, obviously. Okay, buckle up and here we go. Jennifer, it's wonderful to see you. I love that you're on Platemark when I have great things to talk to you about because I know things are happening for you. Can you introduce yourself for our audience?
Hi, I'm Jennifer Mack-Watkins, printmaker, creative strategist. I'm currently residing in Savannah, GA.
Oh, last time I heard you on the air, since you've been on many podcasts already, you were in Hoboken. You've moved down to Savannah.
Yeah, I'm moving down here. I moved down here about a year and a half
Oh,
ago.
sweet.
I travel back and forth as needed, whenever I can, but this is where we're residing for now.
Are you teaching at SCAD?
I'm not at SCAD. I was at Savannah State, and now I'm just trying to focus on just like online learning and creating myself as a brand, as a printmaker, and promoting my book.
Oh, cool. Yeah, we got to get to the book. But before we do, I think we probably should tell people a little bit about you. I know you grew up in South Carolina, Charleston, I think, and tell us about your journey.
My journey was very interesting. Charleston is a beautiful town. There are a lot of money for the arts. Every year they have Spoleto Festival, so I would go to that, and I had a lot of great teachers along the way. I was identified as gifted and talented in elementary school, so there's always ways for me to develop myself as an artist at a very young age. Competitions by county, you enter that, you win a few, and then you get exposed to work with artists over the summer for a week at a time. And so basically I got up until about high school, and I was going to try to apply to get into AP placement studio art program. My teacher who I had for 2 years had retired, and then I had to apply with a new teacher who didn't know who I was. And so that year, my junior year, I wasn't accepted. And
What?
I did the whole track, studio art 1, 2, art club. I did everything that I thought I needed to do for AP placement, and I didn't get accepted. And so that year my senior year, I spent a year without art, and
Ooh,
it was
that's a tough one.
very traumatic. And so then I found ways to figure out, okay, what makes an artist be in AP and not me? Because I felt like I should have been there. And so I got on the yearbook staff. I would go in there, take photographs, write stories, just to be in there. If I didn't do that, I wouldn't be in there. So I did that. I think I might have submitted one of my works. I submitted one of those prints, and I got in county placement. And it still wasn't good enough to get me into the AP program. And so then years later, the teacher found me on Facebook, and she apologized for not being.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I started posting more about me as a teacher and what I'm doing. And I was just getting started Facebook. And so she found me, and she apologized, and she said she should have put me in it. So I think that's got me to where I am now, because I feel like if I follow my own track, eventually things will work out the way it's supposed to be with hard work, because it didn't come easily. I almost would have gave up on art in high school, but there was something deep down inside of me to tell me to try a different route. And that's why I'm here, still on the
She made
route.
you work for it. That's amazing.
Yeah, definitely
Sometimes
so.
I think you're right. I think that is a good thing. But I'm curious, like you actually had made prints already in high school. Like
Monotype.
that hardly ever happens.
Definitely. So it was a paint tube, and I did a small edition, and it was an artist that came into our school doing a gifted and talented program. And I figured like I'd take that moment of me not having art for a year, and that's guided me to be an art teacher. So I said I didn't want that. I didn't want that experience to be for anyone else. And if they're not if their portfolio, if they're not that strong, I want to help them to develop and help them to see that you have something special. With a little bit more polishing, you can be there. So that's why I started to teach. I taught for 15 years and I left the classroom because I wanted to pursue my profession as a freelance artist. And so that's where I am at now.
It's amazing because it's tough to make it as a person who's creating and not having a side gig in the classroom or whatever. Props to you. So
Definitely.
last year we met at the Baltimore Fine Art Print Fair because you came through town to, I think, see Andrew Mockler with Jungle Press because he was carrying some of your prints. I made with him.
I show with him. Yep. And I
Yeah.
publish
So
with him.
tell us about collaborating because I feel like you're mostly in your studio with your Mokuhangu, which we'll get to. Okay, this is super embarrassing, people. Through the entire interview, I refer to Mokuhanga as Mokuhangu. The entire interview. Super embarrassing, but there you are. But what was it like working with Andrew?
So it was really great, and like the relationship kind of developed over time. I think right before, I think maybe a little after I had my daughter, I know I always wanted to see what it is a career of being a publisher and making work as an artist in collaboration. So I was living in Hoboken at the time. I started researching like all the publishers who in the local area, and I just sent cold emails, and then he answered, and I knew that he went to Pratt, so we had a Pratt connection. And he said, well, bring your portfolio by. So I buy everything that I had, put it in my car, drove out to Brooklyn and Gowanus, went down to Jungle Press Editions. And then I showed it to him, like, yeah, let's work together. So then it didn't happen right away because I think I don't know, it just took me a while. So then eventually we came up with the first edition we did together, which was Black Boy Hope 1 and 2. And the way those two came together as two pieces, it was because one of them, I was trying to layer them all at once. I said, wow, I really like them separate just to see like a minimalist approach and then with like a face. But I liked them both because there are two different ones because one was like recognizable, but it could be anyone. And then one was more defined. This is the way this person looks, which was inspired by my son. Um, and
Oh,
so
okay.
then we split them up and then we eventually I did Space Boy and then I did Space Girl. And so I'm just going to stay in space because that's the safest place imagination wise. It's really interesting because I feel like lithography is a really beautiful medium and that's what we do together on plates or whether it be on stones.
Were you working on stone with him?
Stone. The
Nice.
Space Boy 1 and 2, those were plates because that was produced during COVID. So
Oh,
basically, I produced all the plates and acetate drawings in my studio, and I would ship it to him, and he would print a layer and then print a small edition. I like it, and then send it back. But with the Space Boy 1 and 2, I drew those on stone in person.
yeah. Because I think working collaboratively with a printer like Andrew it's a completely different mind space, isn't it?
Definitely, but it's a beautiful thing because I think you can take your strengths that you both have, and he has access to printing litho stones. I don't have access to that, but I have the technical skills to create images, and his expertise in guiding how to carry the edition, I think, is was just like a great collaboration. I'm looking forward to when we do more as well.
Yeah, he's a gentle soul, but he sure gets it done.
He does get it done.
Yeah.
I was literally drawing on stones. I go in town for a weekend or whatever. I got 4 hours, I got 8 hours, and I would draw that stone 48 hours, and then, he'd take that drawing and it would become a litho, and I was like, "Wow," but it took I planned before I come with my drawings already prepared, and then transfer to the stone, it's drawn it, tuche, grease pencils, all that, and I would knock it out between 4 and 8 hours.
8 hours to make I think people don't quite understand how long it takes to draw. It seems so obvious to us because we're in the biz, but I think people are like, "Yeah, that looks simple." Maybe she built that in Illustrator or whatever.
No, it take and that's just like that might be like the final drawing itself, but even before that, you're doing sketches before that. Then it's thumbnail, then it's like you sketch it out, like all that interesting thing. But I figured out 8 hours for me because when I went to Penland, which I know is probably not one of your questions, but when I went to Penland, I was able to go away last year for 2 weeks. And I would say, okay, 8 hours, I was able to do this. 8 hours, I was able to carve 14 wood blocks, print them all before I went back home in 2 weeks. In eight
Wait,
hours.
wait, 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 back up. Okay, so first I don't think we've talked about Penland on the podcast, so tell people what that program is.
Okay, so basically, Penland School of Crafts, located in North Carolina, and basically, it's a place where artists can. They have different programs, so they can either live there or they can take workshops and live there for a short period of time. They can teach there. They can do residencies. So I went there on a fellow residency program for 2 weeks last year. And so I was able to take all my products that I had prepared before I went, and you can buy supplies when you get there. You can order it. They can ship there. It's like a Disney World for artists. Was like, this is unreal. And it was snowing so hard, but and like we lost power and everything, but I didn't care. I walked that road every day for 2 weeks because it was just great to be in expansive, beautiful print space that they have there. And I would get there early in the morning and I would just like create and I'd stay there all day, but I would leave before it got dark because I wasn't the one walking around with flashlights at night with bears and deers around. So I would stay there all the morning and it would take me about 8 hours. I said, this is how much I need to create. And so even with my schedule now, with like family, kids, husband, work, if I get 8 hours in a couple times a week, then it's just enough for me to do something. So I think just finding your own schedule and making art work for you, no matter how busy your schedule is, whether you're full time and you're still working a job, because most artists do that. And there's nothing wrong with it either. And just accepting that when you do need to get that extra income for consistency for your family, stopping what you're doing and noticing that I can do both. And so I think that's what I'm doing right now.
I think that's what makes you an artist and what makes me not an artist. You have that need to create every day, which was the thing that I always asked myself when I was debating between art history and studio in college. Like, I don't have that. So it's like, I better go to art history.
No, but we need you. We need people like you who understand how art history should be expansive and it shouldn't just be what Jansen puts in a book.
That's
You
right.
know, we've come so far, but we got more to go. But we've come a long way than when I studied art history because it definitely was missing a few things, and it still
Yeah,
is.
I know. I'm a little older than you. I'm pretty sure I'm a lot older than you. And when I was taking survey, we used Jansen, and then actually we used Gardner's.
Oh yeah,
So
was it?
they're like warring factions, the
Yeah.
101 textbooks. But we had a professor who was teaching, I think for the first time, a women in art class. And it was based on a textbook that Linda Nochlin had written in 1971, 2, 3. I mean, it was
Mhm.
really early on in the sort of, I mean, I wasn't in college since the 70s, people, but close.
I wasn't
But it,
born yet.
yeah, but it was so revealing to me. I'm like, people, somebody needs to do a show on Jackie Windsor. There's so many people out there that are lesser known than they should
A
be.
a lot of people. Yep. So we
Yep.
have work to do, but yeah, I'll talk more about the book later because I think the book goes into that because the overlooked artists people don't know. But I'm able to educate children and audiences about who he is as an artist.
Yeah. No, yeah, we'll get to the book in 2 seconds. How old are
Mhm.
your children?
They're 3 and 6. You're lucky my eyes are open.
I'm amazed you can get 8 hours in, man. That's amazing.
But
Holy.
it's not always like creating like, art making, but it's just like the preparation of running a business. I spend hours doing emails and like curating different presentations and like proposals and follow-ups and podcasts. So it's like a lot of admin stuff. And I feel like that's creating because it's part of what it takes to be an artist.
Yeah. Do you find that it helps for you to talk about your work with someone like me? Does that help in any way? Or are you just like, am I the only one getting something out of this?
No, I think it's great because it's interesting to be able to answer questions from different people's perspectives and how they view art and what the process can be. Because I think it's more of like exchange and making sure what you're saying, what you're doing is purposeful to you and clear and what your purpose is. If no one can see your purpose, then you got to do a little bit more finagling around. But I feel like I'm not making work for people that they understand my purpose. I know why I'm creating. And if it connects with people and it connects to who it's supposed to, if it doesn't connect, it's connecting for me. I make art for myself, but and hope that people can feel a connection with who they are as opposed to what they value in their missions.
Right. And I
Mhm.
think you are coming from what I'm getting from your work, and tell me if I'm wrong. What I appreciate about your work is that you're paying attention to the childhood experience of art, like trying to get that opened up to people earlier on in their lives so that they become a lifelong learner, which is, I think, completely needed. Like, who are the next museum goers? They're all
Mhm.
95. And
Exactly.
sorry, people. And but I think it's really important to let's talk about the book, the representation part, the outsider art person. That people come from all walks of life, and if they are creative souls, they can make that thing work. Let's talk about The fabulous Mr. Pierce is his name,
Yeah,
right?
definitely. You gotta meet him. You definitely have to meet him if you haven't met him. Mr. Pierce lived in Ohio, but he was from Mississippi. And just his journey within itself. And I didn't know anything about him as well. And so I was found by Random House. They say, hey, we want you to email me. At first, I was like, this is not true. Like I always hear, it's spams. There's spams out there. And so I was like, wait, I'm not clicking any links. Is this for real? And so I responded back. And then, yeah, we want you to do the book because you carve wood and Mr. Pierce is a wood carver. And we had this manuscript. Can you look at it? And so I was like, okay. I never illustrated a book before. I always wanted to ever since growing up. And it's always been a dream of mine. I used to write a lot. I was supposed to be an English teacher and I wanted to be a children's book writer and I wanted to make my own books. All these things is coming back around to all things I knew I wanted to do in high school. Just needed an outlet or access to it. And for me, like when it came to me, I was like, wow. And I didn't know who he was. So I said, let me get the manuscript. I said, I don't know who this person is. I had to research myself by going online, looking through library archives, looking at photographs I found of him. Then I found this film that was produced, two films produced like in 1974. One by Jeffrey Wolf. He's a filmmaker in New York. And he's on my cell phone. I email him, like we follow each other on social media. And Carolyn Allport, they both developed a relationship with him when he was alive. And they both had archives, like I got archives on my drive of photographs people have never seen of the barbershop and him cutting hair and his artwork and artifacts. And all that was I was provided to just by emailing them and saying, I love your film. I'm doing this book for children. And their motive of developing a relationship, making this film was to educate people about who he was and why he's important. And so they already were on the same track as far as missions aligned, and they gave me everything they had. We got on a Zoom call during COVID and we hit it up, chopped it up, and developed a relationship and developed that trust. So then some of the images are in the book as well that was provided for us for the book. And it's going to be great when people can see it in their hands or in their homes, but then also it's also going to be an exhibition at the Zimmerly, which is a whole nother conversation.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, but I feel like just him being overlooked, he's a self-taught artist and he would carve these beautiful, like really detailed religious, but also social aware art back a long time ago. Like he was basically born in like the 1800s and he didn't die until like 1988. So he almost lived to be almost 100 years old.
Yeah, I think he wasn't he born in like 1892 or something, and his father had been enslaved. Yeah.
Right,
Yeah,
in
crazy.
92, and, like, all the things that he was able to see, he's able to put into his work with minimal materials, no education as far as art, but the world was his education, and how he observed it, and how he was able to take what he was observing, what he thought what was important to him, and he was able to replicate that or depict that in his work through sculptures and I guess you would say wood carving reliefs, I
They're
guess
sort
you
of
would
relief, yeah.
and
Be
so
different than relief as you think about it for woodcut printing, but like a flat bas relief sculptural, but flat at the same time.
Exactly, and I didn't get a chance to the Barnes Foundation had a really big exhibition by him during COVID, and
What?
I couldn't go, it was in Philadelphia, and we still didn't know what was happening, so I didn't really I should have went, but I ended up ordering the catalog, and I just had the catalog as a reference for the works that they had on display and the internet. So all that to say is a lot of research, a lot of preparation, going into contacting to get what I needed for the book, and I wanted to make sure the book not only say, here's an artist you should know about, but this is an artist who was an entrepreneur. And he was able to have another job plus the job of an artist. And he's able to do that. And his shop was a place not only to groom and to give confidence to males or whoever decided to get the haircut. Females got the haircut too. But the fact that it was a communal space and he used that space to educate the community about art and about life through his art just by haircut. My mom had a hair salon growing up and she had it for 30 years. That was her job. She did hair. And then my brother ended up following along and he ended up being a barber. So she built a barber shop on the other side of the salon. So I was able to go back and forth between two different worlds. Totally. A men's barber shop today is a place very different now. Traditionally, I wouldn't be able to hang out back there because most of them was most males back there. So I was in the South, salon. I stay in the salon side and then the male side because they would talk about everything. And so it was not a place for a Southern young girl to be with a bunch of males back then. But now everyone's getting their haircut. So it's a little bit different than it was in the 90s. But all that to say was that I was able to see those two different worlds and the purpose of a salon, the purpose of a barbershop. So it's perfect that I did this book. And so I'm excited to share that with people. Yeah, I can go on about a book. So I got a chance to add my love of research and overlook artists. And I felt like I was overlooking high school. So I feel like I have a lot of connections to why I choose the people who I choose to do subjects in my work.
Did you meet the authors of the book? Are there 2 authors? Did I dream that?
I did, yes. So basically, I went to a residency at the Paper Circle in Nelsonville, Ohio, and I knew that both the authors lived there. So before I went to the residency, I said, I'm coming up these dates. Let's meet up. And it was interesting because the authors of the book, they said one had been making books for a while. She said, it's very rare that she meets an illustrator. Like I went the extra mile to make the connection to make sure we saw each other when I was there. Yeah, I contacted the Columbus Museum and I said, look, we're making this book. 2 authors live here. I don't. I'm the artist. Can we see some of his work when we come? So I set up a tour before I even came there, and then we get able to see the works in the stacks underneath the museum that weren't on display and work on display. When I saw them in person, I was like, oh my gosh, these are amazing. So yes, I have met the authors, and we go back and forth in emails, planning out presentations and thinking things through. But we have definitely developed a friendship that will go on and on. We'll probably make more books in the future too.
Oh,
So
that's great. I
yeah.
can't imagine. It's amazing to me that the publishing house, that they're the ones who find and match up with the author. It makes no sense to me. Like, why would you not have somebody that you're friends with illustrate it?
Yeah, but I think it was just amazing that they did find me. So it was just amazing. So the whole process of going through like teams of people agreeing on every page and making sure things are succinct and making sure things are sequential, making sure that the text matches the imagery, like it's a whole nother world that I'm getting used to. And I like it. So I'm interested in doing another book in the future and maybe even write and illustrate my next book.
It sounds like you are the perfect candidate to do writing and imaging. That makes total sense to me.
Yeah, they already spoke to me about doing it. I just have to start either doing the imagery first or either the text first or both. So I just have to start it. And it's about time and I'm ready to start it because the book's out. So I'm ready to start the process. It took about a year and a half to make the book from start to finish, including all the process and all the stages from thumbnails to like the initial sketch to the final drawing, from the final drawing to the print and then mixed media took a while because I was working full time and I had children. So it took me a little bit longer than the average illustrator who just gets to do that one thing. But yeah, like a
Well,
lot of
I,
different things.
I feel like more and more people are, maybe it's because we're all gigging it or something, but the fact that you have children, I have children, and life is more entwined with our working life and work schedule, and there's more allowance for, hey, like I have kids, so chill.
Mhm. Exactly, exactly. And just being kind to ourselves that we chose the route of having children and family and the fact that we have to say this is too much right now. I need more time because this time is the time I'm with my children. Anything before that, okay, yes, but anything after that, we have to definitely talk about just knowing boundaries, having boundaries, and not feeling we have to hide the fact that we have children to be taken seriously and
Exactly. Thank you.
created.
Well said. Yeah, in my career, having kids, I think put me back probably 5 or 6 years behind my other colleagues who didn't have children, and I have never made it as far in my career as they did. Like they're the chief curators, and I never made that. But I wasn't not going to choose my children.
Mm. And everybody has a choice, right? And everyone
Right.
chooses their journeys, but I don't think of it as being behind. I just feel like we're just having to navigate a lot of different things in combination with our career. I don't see myself as being further behind than someone else. Their navigation is different. And we all choose to get on different spaceships. And you decide how you want that universe to be, what's the center of the universe, and where you want to go, how you're going to get there, who's on your crew, who's not on your crew. And you decide that. And your navigation is going to be different. Your navigation chart is going to be different from other people who choose not to have children.
Yeah. I think at my age, when I got into the museum business, there's this progression in the curatorial ranks that was pretty set in stone, and I think it's still set in stone, frankly. But that's all right.
It's a whole nother
Have
world.
fun, people.
That's their route.
When you made the illustrations, you went all the way through to the prints, and then you said something about mixed media. So what did you add to the prints, which were Mokohangu woodcut screen prints? Oh, look, there's the
Yeah.
book.
So this is speaking of mixed media. So the backgrounds are watercolored, and then collage. So
Oh, okay.
it's broken down. So I added different components because they were originally black and white. Huh. And then I added the color by hand and scanned fabrics and scanned drawings to make the image. But it's just nice the fact that I can see my brush mark in the books because that's watercolor. It's not only what I do, but I love flat color. I love flat painting. And so it's just a combination of my love for drawing and my, I guess, me being able to like, be comfortable experimenting because I don't really watercolor, but I was just having fun painting and I was having fun figuring out putting the pieces together to make a whole. Like I'm usually just silk screening layer upon layer, but I can put a piece here, I can put a piece here to make this whole illustration come together as one. That was the fun part about it.
Do
Mhm.
you think of your images in the sort of print zone as in a different way than you think about the thing that's going to illustrate a story? Different requirements?
Different way of working because I'm working with a team of people, but I definitely felt connected to this book. But sometimes you might not get this book was for me. But you have authors or illustrators who are doing work and writing or illustrating things they might not even know about or might not even be really into, but because it's assigned to them, they do it. And I know those assignments will happen. You do what you have to do to make the compensation, whatever that compensation is, of you making a book, or whether it's money or just the feeling of getting through a book and having a product. But I feel like in this case, it's different because I'm not usually working with a team of people to make my work. It's
Right.
alone. But I did feel a connection to this book. Would I produce an edition? I didn't even make an edition of these. That's the difference, right? So in this particular book, there's only one. There's only one. I didn't make an edition of 5 or 10. And so I think the difference, how many I made and like how I worked on it and the fact that I usually don't combine different mediums into my work, but maybe I will in the future. So just everything about it is just very different from how I usually create.
Well, and it can be a pathway down which will lead back to your work in this other column, which I love. And I love that the stars all aligned in this because you're right. Illustrators do get assigned things that they may not feel any affinity for.
Mm.
And here you are, the story's meaningful to you. It's connecting all of the things in a perfect way. It's so great. So
Yeah.
excited for you.
Exactly. I'm really excited. But I also talk to art illustrators who like won't do anything that they don't like. If they don't, there's some people who are like, you know what, if I'm not connected to, I'm not doing it. And so I think it just really depends on that illustrator or author's mindset and what they will and will not do. You
That
know?
would definitely be me for sure. I don't care about I got nothing.
Oh no.
It takes basically, you're given a story and you have to come up with the things that illustrate it along the trajectory of the narrative. And if it doesn't resonate with you, I think it would be really challenging.
Yeah, definitely challenging. Hopefully, I'll continue to get things that I connect to, and I have that choice. It just depends on how bad you need the contract and how bad you need it. But if your work is more important than money, and you value your self worth and what's important to you, and connecting to your artwork, then that's your choice.
True enough. Okay,
Mm.
so tell us about the Zimmerly project.
The Zemley project, wow, that's going to be March. No, yeah, March 3rd through July. I think the end of July, and I'm in process of planning out the exhibition and programmings right now. And so basically, I'm going to have a few of my blocks on display, wood blocks, some of the prints that how they looked before they became mixed media, the printouts, and some artwork by Elijah. It's going to be in there as well.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's going to be like a conversation between Mr. Pierce and I. So it's going to be
Oh
great.
my gosh. Are you working with Christine on that show?
I'm working with Nicole Simpson. She's a curator
I
of
do.
the.
Yes. Nicole worked with me in Baltimore for several years. Yes. Oh, that's great. I'm so glad you're working with Nicole. That's wonderful.
It's going to be great. It's going to be in a children's exhibition area. And I'm going to end up going to visit a New Brunswick school and work with teachers and do, I guess, an afternoon artist talk at the Zimmerly. So that'll probably happen throughout I don't know the dates, but it's going to happen throughout. But I'm really excited about it because I don't really display my wood blocks. Like I just display prints and frames, but I don't even display my own process, but I get a chance to do that because it's going to be a great exhibition. It's going to help educate and hopefully inspire the people to say, hey, I can make a book too and make it your own. I'm making it my own. And I want children, I want teachers, I want the audience to be inspired by it because it's a really gifted profession that people choose to go down. And I'm trying to like in my own profession try to gather like, okay, I like illustration, I like instructional design, I like making art, and fusing all these things together. And eventually, it's going to take me to a different place. But right now, I'm liking where I am because I don't like I have to choose, but I like being able to bring in every aspect of me that was important to me into what I do as a creative or as a printmaker artist.
Well, and I also love that Mr. Pierce was a barber and an artist. And you have the barber and hair salon in your background. I don't know. It's just so great.
And
The conceptual rigor is all right there.
it's crazy because the fact that he's able to juggle starting his own business and just being able to like make art. He had a studio in his barbershop. So it was like barbershop slash studio. So whenever he wasn't cutting hair, he was whittling a sculpture or whittling his wood cuts. But art was a part of his life. It was his work and it was where he worked. And he was able to make a profession out of it and make money from it. So I think it's great. Great
He
business.
was successful selling work in his lifetime.
Yeah, but back then he probably was getting away for free because he probably didn't
Well,
really, he don't, I'm not free, but people probably got really good deals because he just saw it as a way to like gift his talent to people. He seemed very giving and very caring. And I wanted to have that same kind of idea in the book because at the end of the book, he gives an elephant to the little boy who he
no,
talked about how to be encouraged to continue to try to be an artist. And it's not easy and you have challenges. And so that same storytelling of who I think he was as a person, that's what's portrayed in the book.
that's
Yeah.
cool. That's so cool. All right. So I know you've talked on other podcasts about the mokuhangu, but I think we haven't talked about mokuhangu on this podcast at all. So can you
Okay.
start from the beginning?
Yeah, so the book is based in Makahanga because I felt the books have come a long way. You can make books in different ways, but I felt like Makahanga fit who I was as an artist. Like I could have did digital, but I'm not really into digital right now. Maybe later, but Makahanga is really important to me because it was a way to be able to fuse together my interest in my own culture, but in other culture as well. And that's Japanese woodblock. And I had a really great teacher, April Vollmer. April, she
I
wrote a book,
do, yes.
a fabulous book, did research, and she's a fabulous artist and scholar. And so I took her class like 6 times at the Lower East Side print shop.
I love that.
And so then from there I kept taking classes from her and Takuji Hamanaka. I took classes from Manhattan Graphics. And so I'm always about educating. So just getting more and more technical and perfecting and working on my skill. All that to say is Makahanga is a beautiful medium because I can do it in my home. It doesn't have as much toxic chemicals. I'm sure the watercolor has its different chemicals, different colors have more than others, but I don't have to smell oil based or simple green guy where like there's a simple green cleaning things up and like oil doesn't move. Like it's watercolor and it's like rice paste and it's like wood and paper. And so I knew that before I had children. I chose to study Makahanga because I wanted to be able to make work in my home that wasn't smelly. And so I learned this before my children were born. I took my first class in 2012. And then 2015, I went to Japan and I knew I wanted to learn this thing. And so then I learned it, had my daughter in 2016. I left the print shop. I was a resident, I'm not resident, I was like a renter. And so I knew I couldn't be pregnant and I couldn't even get there as often. So I just started, I got to make work at home. How can I do that? Makahanga. And it's great because I feel like it really keeps me in touch with my posture, how I'm holding the tools, being aware of dampness and dryness. And it really helps you to slow down and really look at the surface of things, not just putting ink down. And you can still do the same thing when you print, depending on the medium. But Makanga is so different because I know where the tools come from. I know how rare they are. I know how the paper I can't just get anywhere. And so the rarity of the tools and the fact that I've been to this place that I really enjoy going to, Japan, and this origin, of where it continued to develop over time is really important to me. So I feel like Makahanga was great because I knew that it was a medium that I wanted to educate people on in general, and that was through the book. And so in the back of the book, when you do see the book, it has an artist note where I go into more detail about what Makahanga is.
Oh, that's
And
great.
yeah, so it's like the end of the book, and like it's right here.
Oh, cool.
And that's here. And so I think Makahanga was fitting me because I wanted it to be used as an educational tool, but then also to show that we can use print, handmade print, to make a book.
Right,
Hopefully, I
right.
inspire other people to do the same
Sure.
if
So
they want.
mokuhangu for everybody is the umbrella term for Japanese woodblock print. And so in that zone, you don't need a press at all. You can do it at home, as you said. You're carving a different block for each color, usually. And then when you ink it up with a water-based ink, which is it just watercolor or is it an ink?
It depends. Some people are really developing this process more. Some people do print in oil based, some people
Oh,
combine.
okay.
So some people are doing 3D printing to carve. So it's definitely advanced. But for me, I use watercolor or gouache and a brush
Okay.
and
So
rice
you're
paste.
so you're brushing basically the watercolor onto the relief part of the block, and then you lay the paper down and you hand rub it from behind with this thing called a baren. Do you use like a crystal baren? Because sometimes I've seen glass ones, and sometimes I've seen the ones that are wrapped in, I don't know if that's a banana leaf or what that is.
Bamboo.
Bamboo. Thank you.
Yeah, and the bamboo is coiled inside. I use a combination of balberin and the bamboo and sometimes the plastic. So it depends on like how fine or how much I'm trying to cover in the area. Sometimes I combine the variants together depending on the image. I use all three. I don't know if that's normal, but that just works for me.
Does it give you a different kind of look? Each of the. Oh wow.
Yeah, it definitely I think definitely it does, and maybe the pressure does, but for me, when I use a ball bearing, it can pick up some of the marks of the ball on through your paper, depending on the thickness or the thinness of the paper. The plastic one, depends on the how deep the each ball is, but the plastic one is more flat. So if I might want to have that for like areas where I don't want that to happen. And then the bamboo is even smoother because the coils are wrapped with bamboo. So I feel like each burin has its own texture and what it can do when it's applied to the paper for
Huh.
pressure.
And the other thing that you can do with this technique is that you can, as you're painting, you can paint the varying colors on the block in the same way, which is how the Japanese artists would get those lovely rising the sunrises or whatever.
Because your gradient. Yeah, you can
Yeah,
combine the colors together and blend together too. So very
right.
painterly. I'm glad that you know your stuff. I know that's why I'm here. That makes it easier for me because I don't have to explain all that. But yeah, but it I think it's lovely because it's very painterly, and I feel like if I compare it with Western oil-based printmaking, it's a very different process. But I try to pick up and keep Western techniques combined with traditional Japanese. I like the fusion of both. When I think of Western printmaking, I think of carving out everything, keeping the noise or texture from where you carve. But when I carve wood blocks for the Japanese technical way, I don't always want the noise of where I carved. Sometimes I want it to be cleaned out. And sometimes I want that texture. Sometimes I want that noise, but sometimes I want to keep the texture where it's not cleaned out. So I like the combination of combining Western techniques with Japanese printmaking techniques, if that makes sense.
Yeah, sure. And it's a special wood, right? Like I feel like I've seen Japanese prints from history that have made use of the wood grain. So you must rough up the grain with, I don't know how, with a wire brush or something, and you incorporate that into the design, which I think is so cool.
It comes naturally, but without the wire tool. But I just use a Baran. But it depends on the paper and the Baran, how much grain. And that's what beautiful thing about this book is that you can see some of the wood grain that picks up on the hair.
Yeah.
And you can see the ball bearing in that case. So I
Oh,
think it
cool.
just really depends. And I had a lot of fun. I love the best part for me making the book was that it was makahanga, and then adding the color at the end with the brush was really fun for me. And just making so many different types of browns and making sure that the image of the character stayed consistent. That was a challenge, but it was a fun challenge.
You also do screen printing. Do you do that for a key block on top of a mokuhangu? Is that something you would do?
I've done it. I've done a few prints and I'm probably going to do more. I've done maybe two or three where I combine Makahanga and silkscreen together, but then also I just keep sometimes Makahanga only. Sometimes it's just purely silk screening. But for me, I like to make my acetates for silk screening. Sometimes it's like hand cut, sometimes it's images that are sourced and found, but most of the time I'm hand cutting in a collage like fashion to make my acetates.
Wow, old school.
Yeah, I love a old ruby lift, and I love that smelly black marker, paint markers. So I like to keep tradition with new age as well. And when I make my prints,
Okay, so let's back up and talk. I don't think I've described screen print for our listeners either, really. But there are basically two ways you can do it. One, you can cut a stencil like you would do as a kid and ink through it. But also, screen print has the ability to expose a photograph to a screen so that you get that fine gradation of a photographic image. So there are definitely, I think everybody does both, probably. Although when I'm running around Micah, this art school down the street, nobody's cutting any ruby lith.
Like, what? Cut what?
Yeah, they're
Large
all building it in Illustrator. Yeah.
print, large format printer, and they're learning a new age, but they're not always taught how to use traditional tools. But I think it's really fun when you can combine both or learn both. But you don't have to. Everybody makes their prints as they want to. But I think the beauty of mark making by hand and cutting by hand is that you can see your hand in it. You put that paint marker down on the acetate, and that's your hand. You use a grease pencil, whatever you use to block out light on an opaque way, it's your hand. But I like to combine both. And sometimes it's just like what I need. And sometimes, you know what, I want to make a makahanga for this image, or I want to combine both for this image. So I like to be able to like, hey, I want to do lithograph. I don't have to choose. I only do lithos. Like I like to be able to have access to be able to print any way I want to print, depending on the image or the purpose of the image. It's for me.
Sure. Yeah. No, as the curator, I'm always looking to see if the artist understands why they're using a certain technique. And so, I'm in.
Exactly, exactly. But it's a lot of fun though. I feel like just printing in general, like I didn't do any silk screenings when I was an undergrad. It wasn't until I was in Atlanta at the time. I went to Morris Brown College, which is a HBCU. And at that time, each school had their own different studio classes that they would offer. So I took all my printmaking classes at Clark Atlanta, but we focused more on intaglio and relief. And it wasn't until I taught an education class for kids at Atlanta College of Art and Design, which was bought out by SCAD. It's a way long time ago, but I was able to take art courses that was silk screening. And that's my first time taking it after I graduated. And so I feel like I didn't have access to learning silk screening when I was an undergrad, but I took a lot of education classes after. So I always took classes somewhere. Either I was teaching somewhere, and then I say, I'm going to take a class too. So I always like taking classes. So I think the importance of continuing to develop as an artist is to continue to learn. You never stop learning. And I just think when you take class, you're not only learning, but you're able to exchange and dialogue with other people who might be taking a class for the first time. And then you might be able to like exchange information and you might be able to help one another. But there's a purpose of coming together collectively to learn something and to exchange dialogue as artists. And I think it's really important factor of development of artists.
I agree with you. And that's, I think, why we're in our happy place in printmaking, because it's naturally part of it. Although you can do mokuhongo at home by yourself, which is nice because you can do that. The workshop is always rife with people who are like, oh, what? Try this. They're all problem solvers, figuring out what the next thing is. Yeah, that's
Exactly.
cool.
But being in Savannah, I do miss being in a collective print shop, like how I was when I was at Lower East Side Print Shop. And I have a studio, but it's a separate space. And my first time having a separate space, and it's cool, but I do miss the conversation. So I usually go to SCAMOA to hear lectures. I go to talks just to be around other artists. But I just talk to my friends a lot on phone or on Zoom or go to webinars. And that's how I get my fix for hearing other people's dialogues or me engaging in a virtual way. Mhm.
Does Savannah have a community print shop? No.
No, no, they don't. And SCAD is here, but that's for students. But no, they don't. And so a lot of people just make art on spaces where they have their own studio. Like that's the way art world is, but print is different, like you said, but there is not a community workshop here.
But there could be.
Yeah, it could be, but it does take a lot of work and it does
Yeah.
take dedication has to be your thing. And I don't think my thing is solely to do that. I wouldn't mind helping to be on the board or help to found it and have a studio space there and like gather it. But as far as running a print shop, I don't think that's my calling.
It's been a sort of a pipe dream of mine, but you're right, it is a lot of work.
It's a lot of work. And you definitely are helping other people solve their problems. And you don't have as much time to do your work. You can, but your job is to help to educate and to help have access for people who need that space. And that's your job. People are really good at it. I'm not saying I won't be good at it, but that's just not for me.
So let's turn to Brattleboro, Vermont. What happened there?
Yeah, what did happen? I had a show in 2021, and that show was really successful. I ended up getting into New York Times and Essence and Vogue magazine, and this was all during a pandemic. And so, basically, before the exhibition even went up, we had to think about programs. And so I said, I got to really embrace this virtual things. I would go to virtual webinars and events and see like what worked and what didn't work, what I felt connected with. I wanted that from my show, knowing that people wouldn't be able to go. And so I knew that programming was going to be really important. So I made out like 7 different ideas and Danny Lichtenfield, who was a director there. He's like, we only could do four. So I chose four. The people who I knew, people who I didn't know, or people who I respected, are people who were in the same field as me. So I chose illustrators, I chose curators, I chose coordinators, and I wanted to have a wide vast of ways to be able to connect with all different audiences. I did that. And after the show went down, they were able to get a grant for their programs, for having programs that was a good outreach. And so from there, they nominated me and I got on the board at Brattleboro. And it's been amazing. Did my first year, and I also became a member of BTA, which is the Black Trustees Alliance, to kind of support me and encourage me to do the work, because there needs to be more diverse board members. And
Of
so
course.
that's been a big motivation for me with being a member of BTA, and then being able to feel like I have a voice and I can use my voice as an artist to make an impact in the art world. And then most recently, I helped to say, hey, let's go to New York for our meetup. And we went to New York, and my work happened to be up at the Met. We went and we saw my artwork. I did a brief presentation of artists who inspire me: Catlett, Wilson, Willie Cole, everyone who was in my Amos. And so basically, I was able to show my work in conjunction with artists who I admire. And I did a brief tour, and we got to go to the print room, and we was talking to Jennifer Farrell. And I went to the Met store where I'm showing my work with Laura Einstein. So it was just like really happened organically, but it was great. And we had the board meeting and fabulous food and looked at art collections and all in one day. So all that to say is that it's a beautiful relationship because they respect me as an artist. I might not be great with numbers, or that's not my thing. I have different committees, but like I feel like my vision is really respected for who I am as an artist, and just understanding the needs of an artist and how people can be engaged with artwork from an artist perspective.
Absolutely. I think every board, the museum that I've worked at, there's always been a seat, at least one or two or three, for artists. And certainly the diversity call is if they can get both of those things in one person, even better, right?
Exactly. But I never even thought that artists would be on boards. I thought they only wanted people with tons of money and
I
like, can
need that too.
yeah, that too. And that is the basis of what a board is, to fundraise and to bring money in. But I didn't know that they would have artists on boards too. I never knew that. And so I was like, wow, this is amazing. So Brattleboro is very dear to me. And I was really inspired by not just the people and the scenery, but just the history. Like I go back to the exhibition. Daisy Turner was the reason why I got to where I was. And so she was another overlooked oral historian. She lived to be almost about 100 or so. And that was like the leeway for me making the body of work called Children of the Sun. Jane Beck was able to write a story about her. She documented her. She archived her audio. She wrote a book about her. She took video of her. Had to have been like over time. I know her now. I connected with her because she wrote the book. But it might have, from the footage, it looked like 60s or 70s. And so she was able to take that information. So with all that information, I reached out to the Folk Life Center in Vermont. They gave me all this information, everything. And then I was able to hear her stories. And the story I connected with was the story of the doll, and how the doll was given to her by her teacher, and how the teacher made up this generic poem about Africa and put like an African garb. And she's like, this is not what this doll is to me. And so basically, at a young age, probably like around 7 or 8, Daisy Turner, a local Grafton, Vermont resident, she was able to recall the story of how the doll was empowering to her, and how the doll was just as good as the others from France. And like the teacher was trying to like represent dolls by cultures, but she didn't think her representation of the doll she was given was representing her as her culture. So she made her own poem. She didn't do the teacher's poem. She won the Oracle contest. And I was like, wow. And just hearing her have that story, and it was documented, I was like, it's the doll. Like COVID was happening. I was playing with a lot of dolls. I was playing with a lot of toys because we were stuck in the house for COVID. So I was like, what can I do to connect my life where I am now is through dolls and stories. And so I made dolls with different period dresses and costumes, females and males. And I even put some dolls in space. And each doll had their own name, named after someone historical that people should know. And not just a generic, we just, MLK, you got to know more than Martin Luther King. He's important, but there's more. So I had names like Harriet, May, Emma, Elizabeth, Langston, Gideon, names that we all should know. And I wanted the exhibition to be an educational as well. So we had, just in case you didn't know the names, we had like a little pamphlet that explained each person's name, who they was, why they're important, why they're chosen. And we also had audio of Daisy Turner telling the Dolly story that you can use on the QR code. And then my friend, Fahmi Shakur, she's based in Newark, she did her version, her new version of just like the others. And so we had a contemporary poet,
Oh,
and we
cool.
had the poetry of Daisy Turner, and people could listen to from their cell phones. And so it was just a really technical, but then like period kind of space. And it was interesting because the space that the exhibition was in was a ticket booth for the when it was a train station. So it
Oh,
was just
cool.
really cool. But it was just a great exhibition in Brattleboro because I don't know, my friend David, he had a show there. He was a curator. And so he said, like, do it. And I was like, I don't know anything about Vermont. How can people connect to what I'm trying to do? So I got to go history. So I said, who was a famous African American here in Vermont? So it started off with her first. And so I think Grafton and Brattleboro will always have a place in my heart because it just gave me an opportunity to connect history that might be people that people might not know and make an exhibition about it. And I think it's still what I'm really interested today is just connecting history, my past, my future, and putting it in my work.
That sounds like a show that ought to travel.
I'm hope actually is traveling. I have an
Good.
exhibition coming up. It's going to be part two, Children of the Sun in Orbit, because I'm making new pieces to go with it. And so the work will be on display in Savannah at the Sulphur Studios in May. And so that's going to be coming up pretty soon. Hopefully it'll be just one of many more places for it to go.
Oh, that's awesome. It's always feels serendipitous. Like you had a friend and connected you with Brattleboro, and then it birthed this whole body of work and put you on this path to work with dolls. It's wonder. It's really it's amazing. I love art.
Yeah. I love it too. It's a journey within itself. And I think like the space scene is just the beginning, but I'm gonna keep doing space oriented children stuff because children are part of my life. And I feel like space is just a magical place. And like, it's just a place that imagination and just you think of something you want to do and you try out and experiment in a space that everyone can't get to. And everybody is not supposed to go, not even if you could pay for it. But it's just not for everyone. And I feel like it's just, we can just be admiring of it from below and just the possibilities. And I think for me, I want to create it because my daughter, over time, she's like, I want to go to space. And she said, Mom, I want to do three things. I want to get a black belt in karate. I want to play piano. And then I want to go to space. And she told me that today. I said,
Oh,
I think that's a good path. It's helping people find their paths and whether it's on ground or in space and maybe just in imagination. But I feel like we all need that space to feel like our journeys can be what we want it to be and how we get there is up to us.
but so this idea of space, outer space, is it goes back in Black art pretty far, right?
Yeah, I would think even to I think space kind of thing is even to me like Egyptian art.
Sure, of course.
Like how they could the work was they're documenting present and they're documenting the future. Like you don't get any more space oriented than that. Before Spock, all him, LeVar Burton, they were important, but we were doing Egyptian art inspired, space inspired since back then. And I feel like it's a touch of Afrofuturism as well. And I feel like it's important because we can't let people determine our future. And the only way to do that is to think of things that we can't reach and that we can't see. And that the imagination is there's no boundaries in space. And I feel like that's imagination. And we've been bounded to think, oh, you only can do what happens already. You don't. You only whatever is in this book. Nope. But now you're taking books away. So the only way to stay in that future, in that space, is to be in a space like mindset because it doesn't have to exist. And you don't have to even know what's going to happen because it's your journey and everyone's journey is different. And so I feel like even with everything that's happening, it's purposeful that I'm still doing my art. And the fact that I'm using my children now is because it's needed more now than ever because we can't let anyone or anybody do what they're doing to books now, banning books,
Sure.
taking out AP, African American art history. And
Oh, don't.
you can't even,
Jesus.
we can't ignore it. And I feel like it has to be something that I could do. I could do that through art. I can show how important art is, how important education is. I'm trying to figure out how to use my art more to be a voice for our history and for things that don't exist, and just giving us the possibility that we can imagine. We don't have to do what everyone is doing. You can do what you want to do. It's just how you get there. And I think space is a place.
Yeah.
Sun Ra told us. Sun Ra did tell us.
Well, that's
You know,
right. Yeah, Sun Ra. Yeah, we'll have to do a little. I'll have to include a link to something that will explain the whole Afrofuturism Sun Ra part. But connection of space, like the visual idea of space as being a stand in for imagination. But I also feel like when you read about Harriet Tubman and she's navigating with the stars through the eastern shore of Maryland, which every time I cross the damn bridge, sorry, people in the eastern shore, I get this like chills up my spine, just the, ugh, oh, anyway.
Yeah.
But like this idea of looking toward a place, like, almost outer body experience of I can be anything I want to be out here. I can be safe. I can be, nobody's going to judge me for X, Y, and Z and the color of my skin. Yeah.
Exactly. I'm glad you brought that up. And I think it's also, for me, imagination, but it's also like freedom.
Yes.
And you think about the two of those, like how confining and how overlooked the imagination and the power of it is. And I feel like space is that for me. I feel like it's my freedom, and art making is my freedom. And I don't know what else to say about that, but that's how I feel about it in general.
Yeah. No, I like it. I love the little space girl that you did with Andrew. So if I had a few dollars, they'd come home with me.
Still available.
I know, sure. I have to be very tight on my budget this year because my husband went a little overboard at the fair last year.
He bought up all the prints.
He had bought things before I even had a chance to look. I was like, "Wait, hold on."
What about me?
Yeah, exactly. I finally got my one. Yeah.
More, maybe more next year.
Yeah, exactly. Anyway, yeah,
Mhm.
it's fun. Your work is on the wall at the Met.
Yes.
Okay, so
Yeah, yeah.
how'd that happen?
Well, that happened. I think it happened probably because I think continue to work and continue to notice how important it is to collectively find people that think like you. And you don't have to think like them, but I think just finding that common thread. And we all have our own threads. And sometimes the threads get intertwined and they disconnect, but it's okay because we're all individual humans, right? And there is a group called Black Women of Print and founded by Tanikia Word. And we all know because there are not many Black women printmakers who are like practicing and still alive in the States. And so we all know who is what, who was doing who. And so she made the connections of finding everybody connecting us, being a founding member. We would go through meetings of what's our mission and like how we get more members and like what's important to us. And that was one of our inaugural portfolios that we did together with a common theme, selecting a artist that we admired that was female, Black female. And then we made the portfolio. I think it was a beautiful thing to see it in different spaces and being able to understand that you can have your own voice in art, but then still there's power in collective thought. The Met acquired it, and Getty did, I think Museum of Fine Arts and a few others, and some private collections as well. But when I saw it in person around the same time the International Print Fair happened at the Javits Center this year, I went there and had some friends that met me there. And it was a crazy feeling because I had spent so many times when I was at Pratt going to the print collection to study prints. And I never really felt connected to the work that I saw because it's always the regular the guy.
Sure, yeah, they're great to have, but yeah, where am I? Of course.
They're great. I didn't see my voice. I didn't see myself in the prints that I always saw. But this one exhibition didn't feel like that. The portraiture, the power of portraiture,
Mm.
and the fact that the artists that I knew and studied, and so almost the fact that they were able to connect all genders and backgrounds and voices together to make this beautiful exhibition. And just the fact that the artist that I studied was might have been Durer is in there. You know, I don't know. I think he's in there, but I think like Willie Cole, Catlet, like just to say that I could have my work in a collection that's being shown with them was just out of body experience. It almost felt like unreal, but I was like, wow, I've worked so hard to get to this point. It definitely has been one of the pinnacles of my art career. So it definitely doesn't feel like it really happened to me, but it did. And I saw it twice. I saw it about a week ago, but I also like to see people pass by and actually stop and look. And it's just a great to watch people looking at your work in the
Oh,
Met.
sure, of course.
Jennifer Farrell did a really great job. It was stellar. I'd never seen anything like it. Like you always go to museums and they're very traditional and not progressive, and they keep separating. Oh, this is a female artist. This is a Black artist. This is Asian artist. And it's important to have a recognition of culture, but does it have to be separated? I think the common voice in a subject matter is more stronger than trying to continue to segregate. Trying to segregate things. There's no power in segregation. I feel like art has a common thread and common value, common voice. Put them together. They don't have to be separate. So I feel like that's what made it different for me because I don't really see a lot of prints in traditional spaces that are trying to do that.
And prints at all, really.
Pretty much, pretty much.
Yeah.
I just did a show of Black women artists in Savannah, and it was great because we were all doing different mediums, but we all had a common story of being a Black woman. And all our work looked different, but it was really empowering because we all came from different ages and different paths in our journeys in where we are. And it was just a beautiful thing to be able to do that here in Savannah. But I think those spaces are needed also for encouragement for other people who might not see themselves in spaces. And it's also can encourage the audience. You know what? I can be here. I can do this. But
Yes.
and also, it's important to have those spaces where we're not always there to continue to take up space to say we should be here and you should be looking at us too.
Yeah,
You know?
no, if it's done well, and I agree with you, if there's some cohesiveness to it, it makes a whole lot of sense. I was really
Mm,
happy and proud of another show
that's
called
good.
Alternate Realities, and it had, artists across the board looking at alternate universes.
Wow. That's
Yeah, it turned out
amazing.
really well.
And you should put that in a link in the podcast. I like to
Oh, I
see
will.
that
Yeah,
too.
yeah, yeah. I will. Oh,
Mhm.
yeah. I've written about it somewhere. I'll have to. Yeah, I will put a link to it. So, what's coming up in the future, and then we'll wrap it up after that.
Yeah, so I think the most important thing to happen now is just promoting the book, getting it into indie bookstores and small local bookshops. Barnes& Noble has made a really big change in how they decide who will be in the bookstores. They'll sell the books online, and I found an article about how they're selecting demographically by store of what they're going to cover as far as hardcovers and bestsellers versus not. I definitely found out that not too long ago, which is unfortunate when it makes it hard for people who are just starting to get into illustration art and being an author. But it's better for people who, if they already have tons of books and they're bestsellers, then it's good for them, but not good for everyone else. So that to say is that I'm going to start going on some book tours, book signings, workshops, virtual library presentations, in person workshops for children, for teachers, artists, and just going on a book tour. And that's what I'm doing now, working with my publicist and working on my own. And then I have the exhibition coming up at Zimmerly. That's March 3rd. And then May 3rd, I believe, is my show at Sulphur. And then from there, I think I probably need to get a break in there somewhere. So that's what I'm working on now.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's more than enough because the book tours, I definitely have to do a lot more traveling.
Yeah,
Savannah is not really a communal place. It's very get in your car, go to your home, go and work, and eat, and that's about it.
yeah.
I have to go out of Savannah to promote myself as an artist and as an illustrator.
And as you're talking about distributing the book, don't forget about the museum gift stores.
Oh yeah, gift stores. Yeah, Matt's going to be selling my book there, and what else? I'm even work anybody who sells books. I'm going to reach out to them as well.
Yeah,
Bookstores, especially. But I have some help from the publicist because I give her areas where I might be. I'm interested in, and she'll contact them, and then they have to make the order. But definitely, the bookstores and the museums are really a good idea.
yeah. I would be. I have no doubt that in Baltimore, I mean, they're always Faith Ringgold's books are always out and everything, and I think this one would fit right in. It'd be great.
Thank you, thank you. I
Yeah.
definitely and I love Baltimore. I had a lot of fun when I was there. But, yeah, so I'm looking into other places too for this book and particularly looking at the places that have his work in their collections. So I'm working on trying to make some programs happen in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, because they have work there for him. Columbus Museum, High Museum, I think American Folk Art Museum in New York, and Smithsonian American Museum. I think
Okay.
they all have works, and so eventually, hopefully, we can get the books there sold as well.
I wonder if we have a outsider or I don't know, self-taught artist museum, the American Visionary Art Museum, which has an amazing bookstore, by the way, and the shows are also wonderful. I wonder if they have some of his work.
No,
I'm
I
curious.
should reach out to them. I have
Yeah,
to definitely reach out to them. That'd be great to have that
yeah,
there. Maybe even do programming. I love to do some workshops or demonstrations there, so I'll definitely reach out to them.
yeah. You should for sure.
Mhm,
All right.
mhm.
Well, Jennifer, I think we should wrap it up because it's.
Okay. We can talk all day,
I
but,
know.
so I gotta do some errands too.
Yeah, exactly. All right.
Yeah.
So, yeah, thank you for coming on Platemark. It's been really wonderful talking to you, and I wish you the best of luck with the book tour.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And don't forget, it's out in stores. You can order on all different type of platforms and just support the arts and support illustrators, support authors, support books, support art, period, point blank.
Very
And it's been
yes.
a pleasure meeting with you. And I look forward to hearing from it soon.
All right. Wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you. Take care.
Thank you for listening to Platemark today and my conversation with Jennifer Mack-Watkins. She was a pleasure to talk with, and I really appreciate her coming on. As we said at the top, anything that we talk about, any links that are pertinent and any cool images that we talk about will be over on the show notes at platemarkpodcast.com. And also, as you all well know, over there is a support and donate button, which will enable you to help and support the good work of we people over here at Platemark, which is me behind my desk and my guests, of course. Thank you, as always, to Michael Diamond for the use of his original music, and a shout out to somebody that I haven't thanked out loud before. I don't know why, but sorry, Dan. But a thank you to Dan Fury of Extension Audio for being my sound person and editor. I edit too, but he does the first pass. And it's super helpful. Thank you, Dan. Okay, I guess that's it. We'll talk to you next time.